Welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with someone who is new to the podcast, and I think also fairly new to the Manitoba music community. Once again for this episode, we're going outside the city, which is always nice because I feel like it's often way too Winnipeg centric, just because there are so many artists and so many bands in Winnipeg that it's often hard to kind of get out of that bubble and check out what's happening beyond the perimeter. But I think the best way to start this off is if you want to just introduce yourself and give a bit of background about what you do as an artist, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Garry Doell. I guess I would say my solo project name would be Garry EzRa Doell. But as a band within the local area, it started out as EzRa. So
I mean, that's maybe a good place to start. Why EzRa? I mean, if your name isn't EzRa, it's an unusual. It's not like me starting a band calling it Steve or something, right?
Yeah, well, EzRa is my middle name.
Okay, so, that makes sense then. Yeah.
So I thought, like when back in high school or after high school, when a buddy of mine started a band back in high school, it was just like a duo band playing like new metal and death metal kind of stuff. And after a while, things just kind of weren't really clicking. Like my buddy, he was busy venturing off with a different career path. And I was starting to get more interested in more pop punk stuff. So then we ended the band, so to speak. But then I started just doing like really weird, like Owl City meets Chevelle type of music. I guess you'd call it, on like just making music on GarageBand on my phone.
Okay.
And it was fun to do that at the time, but eventually I was thinking to myself at that point that I want this to be mine. Like I want my music to solely be from me. So I thought using my middle name EzRa as the name would work that way.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's just kind of that's how it started.
So that makes complete sense, because I was wondering that when I saw that your name wasn't actually EzRa, your first name anyway. I was like, well, why is he calling this EzRa? But no, it's cool. That explains a lot. So you're in Morden, right?
Yes.
So what is? I mean, I've talked to a few people from Morden and the surrounding area over the years. It's a lot of different styles. Nobody doing a pop punk thing though. So what is kind of the music scene like there for you and for doing the type of stuff that you play?
The music scene, I've kind of noticed that it's a little bit of a mix between a lot of different backgrounds and cultures. Like especially coming from a small area, most of it would probably be like folk music or like indie music, so to speak.
Yeah.
And of course like country, gospel, and that kind of thing. But I was actually really surprised that there's like a handful of good like rock and punk bands around this area. Like my buddy who is the frontman of Monochromatics, Gustavo Peters, who
he's been on the show.
Yeah. He's helped me produce my music as well, and he's the best guy to work with. And by the way, just give a big shout out to him and his studio, Manchester Studios, best studio in the area.
And, there can't be that many studios in the area, I guess, too, right? So probably,
yeah.
not to besmirch his ability to that, of course, but so like, were you always into this pop punk style? Was that always something that's because it seems like one of the styles of music that has lasted. I mean, generation after generation, going back to even the early '80s, it's been a thing, and for some reason, it doesn't really change all that much. It does a little bit, but it is kind of like this weird dinosaur that stayed the same and continues to like influence younger people every time a new group of teenagers pops up.
Yeah, especially if you look at bands at the time that I guess would be considered like pop punk before pop punk was a thing. Like All.
Yeah, sure.
For example, that was mentioned in that Tom DeLonge documentary, Ernie Ball's Pursuit of Tone. He was talking about All and how like if you take away the more aggressive sound and punk songs that they have and listen to more of like the poppier sounding kind of stuff, it's like, oh yeah, I can see where Blink-182 got their origins.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And also like when I was growing up, living in a Christian home, it was not like you couldn't listen to this kind of music or that kind of music. Like you could, as long as it had like a Christian faith based background,
Okay,
which
okay.
isn't like an impediment because there's a lot of like pop punk and metal bands from the Christian scene that are really really heavy
Yeah,
and
that
really
is
relatable to a major audience.
that's a weird thing that
Yeah.
it's like it's kind of. I mean, as a non-religious person who never was, yeah, I was never into that scene because I wasn't
Hmm.
religious growing up. But
Right. Yeah.
there were always like even when I was a teenager playing in punk bands and stuff in the city, there was sort of this parallel scene of Christian hardcore bands and Christian punk bands and Christian ska bands, and
Yeah.
it was like they were every once in a while they'd kind of sneak into the bill with some secular bands, and you'd be like, who are these guys? And it turns out they had this big fan base. It's just like this weird
Yeah.
little kind of like alternate universe of all these
Hmm.
genres that they have their own. It's just like their own crowd and their own sound, but it's very similar.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I definitely gravitated towards that, especially a couple of my cousins. They grew up playing in a lot of metal bands in within like the local area of where I am,
Yeah.
and like at one point, my cousin's band at the time, uh, a metalcore band called Vessels of Veritas. When they played in Winnipeg a couple times, and there was one time they opened for like two mega big bands within the Christian scene, like Norma Jean and War of Ages.
Okay.
They opened for, and after knowing about that, it's like, what? Both of these bands I grew up with. That's so cool, and in a way, it's kind of through my cousins playing in bands that kind of wanted me to be a part of that as well.
Sure, sure. And so, I mean, I guess that's maybe another interesting thing too. Is it does seem like there's a lot of those bands in that sort of parallel Christian punk scene, Christian hardcore metal,
Mm.
all that, coming from rural areas because I feel like a lot of rural areas outside of Winnipeg tend to have larger religious populations just in general. It's more part of the culture, and that's where a lot of those bands are coming from all these different cities and towns and villages and communities, kind of sprinkled throughout Manitoba. So that yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and especially since um, like punk and metal, it is pretty much like a melting pot when it comes to music. Like everybody from many different backgrounds, whether you're Christian or even atheist, vegan, gay, straight, whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone can enjoy this music together, and that to me is a really good thing. A really
Yes.
good thing.
Well, and maybe that answers sort of the open-ended question that I had earlier about why this type of music still attracts audiences. And I think that might be part of it too. Is that kind of if
Yeah.
you can relate to it regardless of who you are, where you're from, what your
Hmm.
beliefs are. There's going to be a punk band that represents, in most cases anyway, something that you want to hear and something that clicks with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, especially the guitar. Like it is a universal instrument that can be told in many different languages, if that makes any sense.
It does for sure. And there's also, I
Yeah.
mean, that kind of just the energy of it too of punk rock, right? I mean, that's
Mm,
always sort of
yeah.
something that especially younger people gravitate towards. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there's not that it's strictly a young person's genre. There's tons of people who've been doing it
Right.
for decades and they're still making great music. But yeah, there's that
Yeah.
kind of instant, immediate attraction. I think when you're looking for something that's got some aggression and is fast and in the case of pop punk, is catchy and sticks in your head and stuff too.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you like you said earlier when we first started talking about your the EzRa project here, you were
Mm,
doing all this stuff yourself, right? All the instruments you were playing them
yeah.
yourself on when you were doing it on GarageBand.
Yeah.
Has that now expanded into an actual band? Because I saw that you played at the Corn and Apple Festival, which is, I mean, we can talk about that
Yes.
in a minute because that must have been huge,
Right.
being from that area too, right? But I mean, is it now?
Mm.
Do you have a solid band, or is it still mostly just you and you will play with people who are available?
It is that right now, like it's still just solely me, but if anyone's available to either fill in for drums or bass and backup vocals, like
Yeah.
then I'm good. But at the same time, it would be nice if I had official band members because that's really hard to find nowadays.
Well, and I
Is official
imagine
band
where you are too,
members.
right? I mean, that's
Mm,
a much smaller population to choose from than if you were in the city, as far as who's available and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah, yeah. So,
yeah.
how did that show come together then? Because I mean, like, obviously there were big name bands playing there. Sloan played
Oh
and
yeah,
Econoline Crush. But there's smaller
yeah.
stages and stuff too, and a lot of local artists
Mhm.
playing. How did you get involved in it, and how did you get a band together for that show?
Well, how it all came together. One of my friends who was one of the organizers of the youth stage. I contacted him wondering if there was a spot open, and he said yeah. So then I called up one of my cousins who I mentioned was in a band
Yeah.
back in those days, and I asked him if he would be available to drum with me, and he said yeah, absolutely. And then I was really struggling to find a bass player, and then I was talking to my buddy Goose about that, and he introduced me to a high school buddy of his who plays bass,
Oh,
and
cool.
he's like, "What about this guy? He plays bass, and he's really good at it." So then I was like, "Oh, cool. I'll check him out."
Yeah.
And that was the best decision ever made because like we both like clicked instantly, especially since we covered like old Blink-182, like from their like Buddha
Okay.
days and Dude Ranch days. He loves those songs. I love those songs, and we just clicked immediately.
Well,
So
and that's a big setting to be playing for the first time with those guys too. I mean, just the amount of people who come
yeah.
to that thing every year. What was the reaction like? What kind of reception did you get from the people there?
The reaction, I would say a little bit mixed. Like there were some people's faces that was like, but then there was a whole lot more people bobbing their heads to it. So like we didn't get a mosh pit going.
Yeah,
It's not really that kind of
it's not that crowd. Yeah,
stage.
yeah,
It's not that kind of crowd, but still, it was a good time. In fact, one of my one of my other friends, who's a photographer that was taking photos of us, Sloan, was playing the main stage.
yeah.
They managed to catch our show.
Oh,
They
very cool.
managed to act. They managed to be there, and they actually mentioned us when they were performing on the main stage.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
Yeah, like I don't know exactly what they said. I wasn't like there around the time when they were performing. I was still hanging around the youth stage because a couple of other bands that I really liked playing there too. So so yeah, I just got a message from my buddy who's taking photos of us, and he said, "Dude, Sloan mentioned you on stage," and I'm like, "What? Uh, is my hearing aid
yeah, yeah. That's cool.
broken? Did I hear you right? But yeah, it's like just one step up the ladder, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, a few months ago, you mailed me a copy of your demo, which was very cool to get.
Hmm.
I always like getting, especially from people I haven't really heard before too. It's always nice to get a CD in the
Yeah,
mail and deal. What's this, But so what is sort of the plan going forward now? I mean, you have that recorded. That's people have heard that, obviously. Hopefully, a few more than just me have heard it.
yeah,
And I've seen you've been posting music online and stuff as well. And
hmm,
so you have stuff out
yeah,
there, and you're sort of getting your name out, and that show I'm sure helped. What's sort of the next step
yeah.
for you? What are you hoping to do in the near future?
In the near future, I definitely want to keep doing this. I want to take my time with it. I don't want to rush into things completely because honestly, I don't know what the future lies ahead. All I know is that um all I know is that I want to work hard at what I love to do
Yeah.
so that I can get to where I want to be in the future. Because Rome wasn't built in a day.
Sure,
So
sure. Well,
so
I
if
guess
anything, I want to keep re-recording songs from the demo and maybe add new songs. And I want to start a new pop punk or metalcore project
okay,
that something that sounds more along the lines of like A Day to Remember, Chunk No Captain Chunk, like easy core
okay,
kind of
yeah,
music I want to start writing.
yeah. Easy core
So
was something I didn't know realize it was a genre until a few years ago, and I had a band on. They
yeah,
described themselves as easy core, and I thought they were making it up because it sounds so bizarre. But
yeah, pop punk and metalcore together.
I do know what it is now. Yeah, yeah. I've had a few bands on
Yeah.
that do that, but so I guess like then the Ezra the project that you're doing by yourself, that's just out of
Mhm.
necessity at this point, right? Because you have
Yeah.
only you, and then so you want to take these same songs
Yeah.
and bring them to another band. Is that sort of the idea?
In a way, yes. Yeah. Like I mentioned before, I want to re-record some songs from the demo, which Goose and I are in the process of doing right now.
Cool.
Um, uh, there's a couple more songs off of it I want to do, and then maybe 3 or 4 new songs and make like a much better sounding album.
Sure.
And then as far as like the whole EzRa thing or solo project, maybe that might be it. And then move on to another project. Unless I have other ideas for just being, a solo project.
Sure.
I might still keep that going.
Yeah, if you're able to do it, I mean, I'm sure you're probably able to still have song ideas and stuff outside of whatever other band you're doing, right? So yeah,
right, yeah,
you can always have that in your back pocket as an ongoing solo project.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Have you? Again, I know this. You're kind of still bandless at this point, and it's you're doing this all yourself. But have you? Is it like, are you wanting to come into Winnipeg and potentially play shows with whatever project you have down the line?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would, to be able to play in Winnipeg where the scene is really jumping, that would be a dream, definitely. But see what the future lies ahead.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Have you had much opportunity to come to the city and check out some of the bands we have here?
Last year in October, I filled in for drums with Monochromatics at the um at the Bulldog Event Center.
Sure.
Is what it's called. Yeah, and there was band Winnipeg bands there, like Unsilenced, Indigo, and Seventh String.
Okay.
We didn't stay for the whole show there. We stayed for like one band there, and that was Unsilenced that played. I was really, really impressed with how amazing the scene was in within the Winnipeg area. So
well, and that's just one sort of example of it too, right? I mean, you're seeing just sort of one facet of it at a relatively small venue compared to some other ones too. So yeah, that's cool that you got that impression of it. At this point, I think a lot of people hearing this will probably be hearing you for the first time. What's the best way to check out your music now? And like, where would you send someone to check out your music? I know there's so many ways people can listen nowadays. What's sort of the ideal way, in your opinion, for someone to hear your stuff?
I would just say look up Garry EzRa Doell, Garry with 2 R's, EzRa in like brackets, and Doell, Doell, on Spotify and iTunes.
Okay. And do you have is the demo what's up there now?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I got the demo up there. It's been remastered by Goose. And I've got the re-recorded version of School Sucks, which I, with him, released as a single.
Yeah, that was just recently, right? I think I saw you posted something with that online.
Yeah, it was almost a year ago.
Okay,
that we re-released the re-recorded version of School Sucks.
Okay, and is that going to be sort of a lead into like the full project, or are you just doing the single for now and then you're going to see what you guys get? I know you said you're working on other stuff with him, kind of at the moment.
I want to release 2 more singles. Right now, we're in the process of just finishing Summer Vacation. We were hoping to get a release like the first day of summer to kind of help it fit better.
Yeah.
But like it takes time. Perfection takes time. So I think as a joke, we're gonna release it on like the first day of school.
Okay, it's not bad. Yeah, just to remind kids what they're missing.
Yeah.
Very nice. And obviously, sorry, go ahead.
And we're also in the middle of starting to work more on one of Goose's favorite songs from my demo, Dog Days.
Okay.
Which he thought was really funny.
Do you know when that's coming out? Is that just to be determined?
It's yet to be determined.
Cool. And obviously, people hearing this, you're not playing a lot of shows because, again, it's a solo project here. But, this being a podcast, someone could hear it the day it comes out, or they could hear it a year from now. Maybe by then you have a band. Maybe you're playing a lot of shows by then. What's the best way to find out what you're up to as far as potential upcoming shows or new music, or finding out what's going on in your world?
I'm on Instagram right now as EzRa Official 2021. So yeah, I think maybe you can direct people in that sense.
I'll link to that
follow
too.
Me on Insta.
Yeah, I'll link to that too for sure. That's the main spot though, the Instagram.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And then, like, I guess, do you have any sort of hopes for the scene where you are? I mean, is it growing? Have you noticed since you've been interested in the music scene in your community? Has it been actually, like, have you seen growth, seen new sounds, new bands, things like that?
I've definitely noticed a lot of more local shows, not necessarily of like punk or metal, but like
Sure.
of like just a blend of things that everybody likes. I've noticed a lot of that. And yeah, it's been really good. It's
Cool.
it's really good stuff going on over here.
Cool. So everybody go down to Morden and check out the really
Yeah.
good stuff that's going on. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.